Hello and welcome back to the Yours and Old FoMoCo Iron YouTube channel. My name is Adrian Clements, and today in video number 19 we're going to investigate and untangle the very confusing story of Ford Motor Company's paint color with mix code number 1730-A as applied to passenger cars. We will see that this paint color was marketed under 5 different names during 6 model years between 1965 and 1972. We'll begin by identifying the mix code in FoMoCo literature and reviewing a summary table of the 11 model year, vehicle line, color code, and paint color marketing name combinations for this mix code. We'll then see supporting FoMoCo literature for the color code and marketing name for each of these 11 combinations, and photos of a car painted this color for most of the combinations. Let's get started. All FoMoCo paints have what is called a mix code, a unique alphanumeric identifier for the particular mix of chemicals that make up each paint color. The mix code is independent of the marketing name or names used by the various FoMoCo divisions that may have applied the paint to their vehicles in a given model year. This scan is from page 5 of the paint section from the text portion of the 1965 to 72 Ford Car Master Parts and Accessories Catalog issued in May 1975, FoMoCo Form FP 7635-A. The lower of the 3 highlighted areas shows that color code 3 was used for model years 1965 and 69 on the Mustang, was called Vermilion, and was mix code 1730-A. Ignore the AE-60 part number prefix. As we'll learn in the video, this paint was actually called Poppy Red on the 1965 Mustang and Calypso Coral on the 1969 Mustang. The upper highlighted area shows that color code 1 was used for model years 1970 and 71, was called Calypso Coral, and was mix code number 1730-A. In actuality, this paint was used on some 1974 passenger cars but was called Vermilion. The 1971 application listed is for Ford trucks only. Please note that Vermilion is properly spelled with only one L, not 2, like the word million. The middle highlighted area shows that color code 2A was used for model year 1972, was called Calypso Coral, and was mix code number 1730-A. This paint was actually called Medium Coral and was available only on the 1972 Ford Pinto. This scan is from page 5 of the paint section from the text portion of the 1965 to 72 Lincoln Mercury Car Master Parts and Accessories Catalog issued in November 1975, FoMoCo Form FP 7566-A. The lower of the 2 highlighted areas shows that color code 3 was used for model years 1968 and 69, was called Vermilion, and was mix code 1730-A. Again, ignore the AE-60 part number prefix, and the B part number suffix is because this listing is for a half-ounce tube of touch-up paint. In actuality, this paint was called Calypso Coral on the 1968 Mercury and Competition Orange on the 1969 Mercury. The upper highlighted area shows that color code 1 was used for model years 1970 and 71, was called Calypso Coral, and was mix code number 1730-A. This paint was actually called Competition Orange on 1970 and 71 Mercuries. In case you hadn't noticed, the Master Parts and Accessories catalogs are not good reference materials for correct paint color marketing names. I put together this 1965 to 72 FoMoCo mix code number 1730-A summary table to show the results of the extensive research required to figure out the actual history for this mix code. When my friend and automotive journalist Diego Rosenberg recently suggested this subject as a future video topic, my initial thought was that it should be pretty straightforward and simple to do. No. As it turned out, the 4 days of work behind this video was some of the most intense and at times most frustrating research required for any of my videos yet. All that being said, The results for mix code number 1730-A are as follows. Number 1. The 1965 Ford Mustang with color code 3 had poppy red paint. Number 2. The 1968 Mercury Montego two-door hardtop, formal, Montego MX two-door hardtop, formal and convertible, and Cyclone with color code 3 had Calypso coral paint. Number 3. The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 302 Sports Roof, which was only produced between approximately April and July 1969 with color code 3, had Calypso coral paint. Number 4. The 1969 Mercury Comet Sports Coupe, Montego two-door formal hardtop, Montego MX two-door formal hardtop and convertible, Montego MX Brome two-door formal hardtop, Cyclone two-door fastback hardtop, and Cyclone CJ two-door fastback hardtop with color code 3 had competition orange paint. Number 5. The 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator hardtop, which was only produced between approximately April and July 1969 with color code 3, had competition orange paint. Number 6. The 1970 Ford Maverick, produced between approximately August 1969 and July 1970 with color code 1, had vermilion paint. The early 1970 Mavericks, produced between about April to July 1969, were not available with color code 1 vermilion paint. Number 7. The 1970 Ford Mustang and Torino with color code 1 had vermilion paint. Number 8. The 1970.5 Ford Falcon, which was only produced from approximately January to July 1970 with color code 1, had vermilion paint. Number 9. The 1970 Mercury Cougar and Montego with color code 1 had competition orange paint. Number 10. The 1971 Mercury Cyclone Spoiler two-door hardtop with color code 1 had competition orange paint. Number 11. The 1972 Ford Pinto with color code 2A had medium coral paint. The 5 different marketing names for FoMoCo mix code number 1730-A were Poppy Red, Calypso Coral, Competition Orange, Vermilion, and Medium Coral. We'll now go through these 11 applications of this mix code and see the underlying documentation for all 11 and an actual car painted that color for 8 of the 11 applications. Let's talk about application number 1, the 1965 Ford Mustang with color code 3 called Poppy Red. The 1965 Ford Mustang fax book was published for Ford salesmen to study and learn about the brand new Mustang when it was introduced on Friday, April 17, 1964. This book was intended to be inserted as a new section in the 1964 Ford Carfax book, which contains similar information for the 1964 Ford, Fairlane, Falcon, and Thunderbird lineups. Page 24 of the 1965 Ford Mustang fax book lists color code 3 as being called Poppy Red. Even though the Mustang was introduced as a 1965 model, it was introduced 3/4 of the way through the 1964 model year, so the paint color and interior trim information was added to the 1964 Ford Color and Trim Selections book. This paint sample from that book confirms that color code 3 was called Poppy Red. The 1965 Ford Color and Trim Selection book shows on the Mustang page that color code 3 was available on the Mustang and was called Poppy Red, and the paint sample confirms that color code 3 was indeed called Poppy Red. This 1965 Mustang convertible has VIN 5F08C357434, and it was originally painted Poppy Red per the color code 3 showing on the door data plate. This car has been repainted per the overspray on the heads of the screws securing the door latch and appears to be a bit too orange for Poppy Red. However, Mix code number 1730A is a shade of paint that can present very differently in photographs depending on the lighting. Okay, now let's see application number 2, some of the 1968 Mercury Montego lineup that was available with color code 3, called Calypso Coral. The 1968 Mercury Color Upholstery Selections Book paint sample shows that color code 3 was available only on the Montego two-door hardtop formal, Montego MX two-door hardtop formal and convertible, and Cyclone, and was called Calypso Coral. This 1968 Mercury Cyclone GT two-door fastback was photographed by Ron Gross at the Cougar 50th anniversary celebration at Ford Motor Company World Headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan on Sunday, June 11th, 2017. This car has VIN 8H15S540057, and it was originally painted Calypso Coral per the color code of 3 showing on the door data plate. Let's talk about application number 3, the 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 302 with color code 3 called Calypso Coral. The 1969 Ford Carfax book and the 1969 Ford Color and Trim Selections book in my FoMoCo reference library do not contain update pages for the Mustang Boss 302 sports roof that was produced from approximately April to July 1969. Fortunately, the top of page 2 of the 3-page Boss 302 press release dated Thursday, March 27, 1969, lists the 4 paint colors available on the new model as bright yellow, Calypso Coral, Wimbledon White, and Acapulco Blue. Please note that the first letters in each word of these paint names should be capitalized as they are proper nouns. For some reason, Ford missed this on 5 of the 8 words. This 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 302 sports roof has VIN 9F02G195375. The color code of 3 is almost illegible in the door data plate photo, but the gate release confirms that this car was originally painted Calypso Coral. Okay, now let's see application number 4, some of the 1969 Mercury Montego lineup that was available with color code 3 called Competition Orange. The 1969 Lincoln Mercury product manual on pages 4B, 6B, 8B, 12B, 14B, and 16B of the Montego Models and Equipment section shows that color code 3 was available only on the Comet Sports Coupe, Montego two-door formal hardtop, Montego MX two-door formal hardtop and convertible, Montego MX Brome two-door formal hardtop, Cyclone two-door fastpack hardtop, and Cyclone CJ two-door fastpack hardtop. The 1969 Mercury Color Upholstery Selections book paint sample shows that color code 3 was called Competition Orange and was updated to be available only on the Montego class and Cougar Eliminator. The back of the paint sample shows that this paint color was initially only available on the Montego class before the Cougar Eliminator was introduced later in the model year. This 1969 Mercury Cyclone CJ two-door fastback hardtop with VIN 9H16R536123 was originally painted Competition Orange per the color code 3 showing on the door data plate. Let's talk about application number 5, the 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator with color code 3 called Competition Orange. The 1969 Lincoln Mercury product manual in my FoMoCo reference library does not contain update pages for the Cougar Eliminator hardtop that was produced from approximately April to July 1969. Fortunately, a Cougar Eliminator page was added to my 1969 Mercury Color Upholstery Selections book, which shows that trim codes 5A and EA were recommended interiors with color code 3. The paint sample in this same book shows that color code 3 was called Competition Orange. This 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator hardtop has VIN 9F91G580696. The deluxe Marty report for this car shows that it is color code 3 for competition orange paint. Okay, now let's see application number 6, some 1970 Ford Maverick production with color code 1 called Vermilion. The 1970 Maverick was introduced to the public on Thursday, April 17, 1969, exactly 5 years to the day after the 1965 Ford Mustang was introduced. And from that point until about July 1969, Vermilion was not an available paint color on the Maverick. They did have a paint during that period called Thanks Vermilion with 2 L's in Vermilion as a play on the phrase, Thanks a Million. This paint color can be seen on the back cover of the Ford Maverick sales catalog dated March 1969, at the very beginning of production of the 1970 Maverick. Thanks Vermilion was a darker color than Vermilion, had a color code of 3, not 1, and had a different mix code number of 1331-A instead of 1730-A for Vermilion. The revised sales catalog, now called Maverick 70, was issued in August 1969, and Thanks Vermilion is no longer listed as it was discontinued, but Vermilion is listed as it was added to the Maverick lineup for regular 1970 model year production between approximately August 1969 and July 1970. The 1970 Ford Carfax book on page D12 lists color code 1, please note the capital I should be a 1, as being called Vermilion. The 1970 Ford Color and Trim Selections book paint sample shows that color code 1 was called Vermilion, and it should have Maverick printed on it to show that color's availability on the Maverick lineup starting around August 1969. Unfortunately, I do not have any photos of a 1970 Ford Maverick painted Vermilion in my FoMoCo photo archives to share with you. Let's talk about application number 7, the 1970 Ford Mustang and Torino with color code 1 called Vermilion. The 1970 Ford Carfax book on pages E23 and B27 show that color code 1 was available on the Mustang and Torino respectively and was called Vermilion. The 1970 Ford Color and Trim Selection book paint sample shows that color code 1 was available on the Mustang and Fairlane/Torino and was called Vermilion. This 1970 Ford Mustang Boss 429 sports roof has VIN 0F02Z142806 and is CarCraft number 2500. This car was auctioned by Mecum Auctions in Seattle in 2014, and the auction verbiage states that this car was originally painted Calypso Coral, which is incorrect. The paint color was actually called Vermilion and is color code 1. This confusion of calling 1970 Ford color code 1 Calypso Coral instead of the correct Vermilion is widespread, as even gate releases from Dearborn Assembly during the 1970 model year listed color code 1 as being called Calypso Coral, a carryover from that paint color's name on the 1969 Mustang Boss 302 sports roof, even though the color code had changed from 3 in 1969 to 1 in 1970. Even Marty AutoWorks made this mistake for more than 15 years. In my FoMoCo photo archives, I have dozens of Marty reports for 1970 Mustangs and Torinos with color code 1 that is incorrectly listed as Calypso Coral or even Vermilion with 2 L's, and they are all wrong. They should show that color code 1 on these cars was called Vermilion with 1 L. The sales catalogs and 1970 Ford Carfax book are crystal clear on this point. Okay, now let's see application number 8, the 1970.5 Ford Falcon with color code 1 called Vermilion. The 1970.5 Falcon was introduced to the public in January 1970, and from that point until the end of production in approximately July 1970, Vermilion paint was available on that series. The 1970 Ford Carfax book on page C14 of the 1970.5 Falcon section lists color code 1 as being called Vermilion. The 1970 Ford Color and Trim Selections book paint sample shows that color code 1 was called Vermilion, and it has a Falcon update sticker showing that color's availability on the 1970.5 Falcon lineup starting around January 1970. Unfortunately, I do not have any photos of a 1970.5 Falcon painted Vermilion in my FoMoCo photo archives to share with you. Let's talk about application number 9, the 1970 Mercury Cougar and Montego with color code 1 called Competition Orange. The 1970 Mercury and Lincoln product data book on pages 10, 12, and 14 of the Cougar models section lists color code 1 as being available on the entire 1970 Cougar lineup and called Competition Orange. The 1970 Mercury and Lincoln product data book on pages 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, and 47 of the Montego/Cyclone models section lists color code 1 as being available on the entire 1970 Montego lineup and called Competition Orange. The 1970 Mercury Color and Upholstery Selections book paint sample shows that color code 1 was available on the Montego and Cougar only and was called Competition Orange. This 1970 Mercury Cyclone spoiler two-door hardtop has VIN 0H17C537030. The gate release for this car shows that it has Competition Orange paint, which is color code 1. Okay, now let's see application number 10, the 1971 Mercury Cyclone spoiler with color code 1 called Competition Orange. The 1971 Mercury product data book on page 62 of the Montego/Cyclone standard models section lists color code 1 as being only available on the Cyclone spoiler two-door hardtop and was called Competition Orange. The 1971 Mercury Color and Upholstery Selections book paint sample shows that color code 1 was available on the Cyclone spoiler only and was called Competition Orange. This 1971 Mercury Cyclone spoiler two-door hardtop has VIN beginning with 1H17, and according to the Elite Marty Report excerpt, it was painted Competition Orange, which is color code 1. Last, but hopefully not least, let's talk about application number 11, the 1972 Ford Pinto with color code 2A called Medium Coral. The 1972 Ford Carfax Organizer on page E19 and the Pinto Color and Trim Guide, both from the Pinto section, list color code 2A as being available on the entire 1972 Ford Pinto lineup and was called Medium Coral. The 1972 Ford Color and Trim Selections book paint sample shows that color code 2A was available on the Pinto only. Remember, we're talking about passenger cars only in this video. And it was called Medium Coral. Unfortunately, I do not have any photos of a 1972 Pinto painted Medium Coral in my FoMoCo photo archives to share with you. Thank you for watching video number 19. I hope you enjoyed learning everything about FoMoCo mix code number 1730-A. Please be sure to check out videos number 1 through 18 on my channel for more interesting FoMoCo related content. Please like, comment, and be sure to subscribe. There are lots more videos coming, so subscribe and be notified as I release each new video. If you have any questions or if you have a suggestion for a future video topic, please feel free to email me at adrian.clements@me.com. Yours in Old FoMoCo Iron, Adrian.